Oh, thanks, you.
Actually, I might have once because he's
Here we go. Good, thank you. I forgot to mention it's on the agenda.
Yeah, I don't think I was.
Jamie, Roger, you gonna replace your speaker?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, but this one is. Yeah. Yeah, this one.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this one is.
Jennifer, are we on? Okay. We'll go ahead and get started. I would like to call to order this work session of the Anchorage Assembly confirmation hearings for the appointee for the Librarian Director, Ms. Sandra Graham. We'll go ahead and start with introductions. We'll begin with the phone. Is anyone on the line?
Welton.
Okay, and then around the room?
Cameron Perez-Verdia.
Pete Peterson.
Thanks, Alito.
Felix Rivera.
Jamie Allard. Crystal Kennedy.
Forrest Dunbar.
Christopher Thornstein.
Suzanne LaFrance?
Sammy Graham.
Nikki Chewbacca.
Jennifer Bellaplaza.
And in the room, we also have,
Patrick Burke. Oh, sorry, Eugene. You can call him until point government watchdog. Patrick Burke.
Dee Ennis.
in the back.
Colby Hickle.
Chuck Hugh, Ray Campbell, Larry Baker, Bruce Graham.
Smith, that would work. And we also have Mayor Bronson with us. We are noticed from noon to 1 p.m. And before we get started, I want to mention that, one, we are working on a sound system upgrade. And if folks could just speak up and actually, sorry, I'm supposed to be talking to this microphone. And then second, coming off of our discussion from the last work session, I just want to call attention to Charter Section 5.02, Powers of the Mayor, which states the mayor shall appoint all heads of municipal departments subject to confirmation by the Assembly on the basis of professional qualifications. Members are urged to keep in mind, as we consider the qualification of nominees, we want to be careful concerning reputations. Questions should be limited to education and work experience. Please be aware of any sensitive personnel issues that may not be legally permissible for discussion in a public forum. If members have relevant questions concerning personal characteristics or habits, we can consult with legal counsel to consider holding a special meeting and executive session on a later date, or offering the nominee the option to waive the executive session. And like last time, if any questions come up, we have counsel present and we can just discuss process as need be. So now we'll turn to Mr. Chewbacca for an introduction of the nominee.
Thank you, Chair LaFrance. Today I've been given the honor and privilege of introducing Ms. Sammy Graham, Mayor Bronson's nominee to serve as director of the Anchorage Public Library. As you are aware, Ms. Graham's nomination has been the subject of some controversy. So I'd like to take some extended time in my introduction to explain and clarify why Mayor Bronson has nominated Sammy for this position, a position for which she is eminently qualified. Sammy has graciously ceded to me some of the time she'd otherwise would have taken in her opening statement so that I can communicate our mayor's position on this nomination. I want to thank the Assembly in advance for your thoughtful consideration of the reasons behind this administration's support of Sammy, as well as for your consideration of the many statements of support on her behalf from the general public, including from former Governor Bill Walker. I understand he recently sent you a letter of support on Sammy's behalf. Sammy is such an excellent nominee for library director, and they beautifully describe who she is as a person. Governor Walker writes this of Sammy, quote, "He has an incredible work ethic, integrity, compassion, embraces and befriends many people who do not share the same faith or political affiliation, has dedicated her professional career as a teacher, counselor, and principal to improving the educational opportunities for Anchorage's diverse student population. She wants," and I love this, "every child to succeed." Now that is a library director for every citizen of Anchorage. Governor Walker concludes with these words: "Sammy's strong communication and interpersonal skills, her decades of work with Anchorage's diverse population of students and families, her excellent organizational skills, staff management and administrative skills, and her strong character candidate for this position, and I hope you will, her appointment." I also, this is just hot off the press, I think a copy has been provided to all of you. We have a recommendation and of support too from former Lieutenant Governor Meade Treadwell in support of Sammy's nomination. But with that sterling recommendation from a former governor in mind, as well as from a former lieutenant governor, I'll provide a short summary of what I intend to cover in my introduction of Sammy today. My remarks are divided into three parts. First, I'm going to address the mistaken view that Mayor Bronson is bound by the minimum qualifications established for the library director position in the relevant job classification. Second, I'll provide you some helpful context that demonstrates the mayor's nomination of Sammy to this position is neither unique nor an aberration, but rather is part of a documented and growing trend in the hiring of professional librarians and directors across our nation. Third and finally, I'll conclude with Sammy's exceptional qualifications and how they wonderfully dovetail with our library's threefold mission, which is connecting people to education, information, and community. So with that, some have expressed concern that Sammy does not meet the minimum qualifications to serve as library director because she does not possess a Master of Library Science. I've been advised by our legal department that the mayor is not bound by the minimum qualifications for this particular position. Specifically, section 3.30.024D of our municipal code provides as follows. Assemblymember Perez-Verdi actually referred to this earlier. The qualification statements in each class specification establish requirements that must be met by an individual before consideration for appointment or promotion to a position in the class. Common alternative combinations of education, training, or experience are specified in the class specifications. However, other combinations may be qualifying if deemed equivalent by the director. Just want to repeat that last sentence. Other combinations may be qualifying if deemed equivalent by the director. In other words, as the chief executive officer of our municipality, the mayor has the authority to nominate Sammy as the next library director because he's determined her experience is equivalent to the minimum qualifications set forth in the class specification for this position. I also think it's important to note that the library director's position description, which was updated and approved by the previous library director in March 2014, does not require a Master of Library Science. Item number 20 in the position description asks for a list of any license or certification, among other things, that is identified in the job class specification as necessary to perform the duties and responsibilities of the position. And it also goes on to say, please be specific. In response to that question, the position description makes no mention of an MLS degree, but rather states a mere preference for a second degree in business, public administration, or human resource development. So if we're going to be technical about Sammy's qualifications, we would be compelled to recognize that there is a clear conflict between the minimum qualifications set forth in the general job classification and the minimum qualifications set forth in the specific position description. So even if the mayor were bound to follow a wooden reading of the minimum qualifications for this position, which I've already demonstrated is not the case, he still would need to decide which document to follow. Is it the job classification job class specification, or is it the position description? Well, I consulted with my staff on this issue, and I've been informed that HR practice and procedure is to follow the position description over the job class specification if there's a conflict or inconsistency between the two. In short, Even if the mayor were subject to the minimum qualifications for appointing a library director, an MLS degree currently would not be necessary because it's not required by the position description, a position description that was written and approved by the previous library director. Regardless, Mayor Bronson is confident the Assembly already is well aware that he's empowered by our municipal code to consider professional qualifications he deems equivalent to those set forth in this particular class specification, because this and previous assemblies routinely have confirmed nominees to serve as department heads who neither met the relevant minimum qualifications set forth in the jobs class specification, nor those set forth in the position description. The mayor simply requests that this assembly continue a long-held tradition that it and its predecessors have adhered to and honored, namely that Anchorage's mayors are authorized and empowered by our municipal code to appoint their teams, even if some of them do not satisfy certain minimum qualifications, so long as they otherwise possess equivalent qualifications relevant to the position at issue. For the sake of this and future mayoral administrations, Mayor Bronson respectfully submits that ending this unbroken tradition in his administration could have far-reaching and unintended consequences for future mayoral administrations and assemblies. That said, Mayor Bronson understands some are simply concerned that, as a general matter, a person who does not possess an MLS degree is not equipped to manage a library. So he directed me to perform some research to address this understandable concern, because public input and concerns are important to him. The results of my research have been revealing, to say the least. Bottom line, there is a heated debate between and among professional librarians as to the necessity of an MLS degree for library directors or for those who otherwise serve as executives within the librarian profession. For example, the American Library Association, which is the world's largest and oldest library association, recently debated whether its executive director should possess an MLS. Ultimately, it determined that an MLS should only be a preferred qualification, not a required one. That outcome is worth contemplating for just a moment. The American Library Association, which in its own words is dedicated, quote, to providing leadership for the development and improvement of the profession of librarianship, does not require that its executive director possess an MLS. Rhetorical question, why would we require of our library director a degree that even the world's oldest and largest library association does not require of its chief executive? Furthermore, surveys of the professional landscape reveal a lack of consensus as to whether an MLS degree is necessary for a library director. For example, a survey of directors of the Association of Research Libraries was performed in 2017. The Association of Research Libraries is a nonprofit and is comprised of about 125 research libraries. The survey found that 42% of the library directors who responded believed an MLS degree was necessary for a library director. However, 33% believed it was not necessary, and 25% did not even have an opinion either way. In other words, 58% of the library directors either did not believe an MLS degree was necessary or did not have an opinion either way. It's significant that there was near parity between those who believed in the necessity of an MLS degree and those who did not. Equally interesting are some of the library directors' survey comments. One library director who'd been a librarian for well over 2 decades said this: "My MLS training did not provide me with any of the skills that I consider to be essential in my role as a library director." Another study published by the American Library Association found that 63% of library directors surveyed said that an MLS degree was not a requirement for all professional librarian positions at their respective libraries. 63%. The study concluded, quote, "Survey data indicate that in public libraries, hiring non-MLS librarians is common practice. And in academic libraries, this type of hiring is gaining momentum." In other words, Mayor Bronson's nomination of Sammy Graham is neither unprecedented nor uncommon in modern day librarianship. Rather, it's consistent with a growing national recognition and trend that an MLS degree is not the only means of evaluating a person's professional qualifications to serve as a library director. Finally, it's important to note that no one with an MLS degree applied for the position of library director during the Bronson administration's month-long transition. Regardless, Sammy Graham is exceedingly qualified for this position. While she does not possess an MLS degree, the purpose of a library extends far beyond the organization of information, the maintenance of physical and digital resources, or the philosophy of information dissemination. It encompasses the promotion of literacy, learning, education, and the facilitation of community connections. In fact, the Anchorage Public Library's 2019 to 2021 strategic plan has, quote, 3 community focus areas, which include education, especially supporting literacy for our young children and continuing skills development for teens and adults. It also calls for serving as a bridge to information and resources for our municipality and building community among the citizens of Anchorage.
And Mr. Shabaka, if you
Yes.
could go ahead and wrap up, I've got a few folks in the queue with questions.
I'm
I don't wanna run out
happy
of
to. I'm happy to. I've got just a couple more pages, but this is very important for the mayor because this has been a very contentious.
Just point of order, we're 25 minutes in, so.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I just want to make sure we have enough time for discussion. Go ahead, please.
That's fine. I just want to make sure Ms. Graham gets her full due. So would it be appropriate if you're going to cut me off and not cover what we want to explain, that we provide the assembly and the public with, we'll provide the assembly and the public with what we are not able to cover. So that way it
Absolutely.
gets,
I think that would
gets
be
communicated.
wonderful if you could put it in writing too, and then we can make it available, folks. But we want to
Absolutely.
give time for everybody. But
So,
go ahead, please.
Sammy's educational degrees and professional experiences have well prepared her to advance not only our public library's current strategic plan, but also to advance the core purpose of any public library, which is to promote literacy, education, and community. She holds a Master of Educational Leadership from UAA and a Master of Science in Counseling from Long Island University. She has leveraged her classrooms as well as the schools and libraries she's managed to serve as storehouses of information and resource for our student population. She's facilitated college-level classes on reading and math instruction. She's personally taught our students. She's brought community members together to promote the well-being of our young people by teaching social and emotional learning to students, staff, and family. She's managed support and advocated for school libraries, which are the libraries most accessible to our municipality's children and youth. She's received trauma-informed training. She's had training in emotional, psychological, and physical workplaces. She's been a presenter at conferences and much more. She's also a hard worker. She's diligent, and she's excellent in her profession. In fact, that's all been recognized by a number of organizations. In 2007, she was honored with an Excellence in Education Award. She's also been honored by the Alaska Association of School Libraries, which recognized her as an outstanding administrator in 2015. In a time when almost 60% of Anchorage's 3rd and 4th graders are illiterate, a number that swells to well over 70% for our school district's African-American children and Alaska Native and American Indian students, a library director with extensive experience in education and literacy is not just a nice to have, it's a need to have. Our literacy crisis this past year has likely compounded that issue, which makes Sammy's skill set all the more valuable. I want to close with by saying that the mayor understands, first of all, that there are some who are concerned that because Sammy does not possess an MLS degree, that would affect the library's ability to get state grants. I've been in communication with the state librarian and been informed that the only grant that the library has from the state, annual grant currently has, is a public library assistance grant in the amount of $35,000 per year. That is 0.004% of the library's $9.2 million budget this year, a fraction of that budget. And regardless, she can apply for a waiver of that requirement at the end. To conclude, our mayor has the utmost respect and appreciation for our professional librarians and for the MLS degree many of them have obtained. His nomination of Sammy Graham in no way is intended to minimize or dismiss the import of these degrees. He simply has nominated an excellent leader and administrator whose professional background and experience in all three components of our library's threefold mission will only enhance its success and the public good it provides our community. And I'll end with this. Mayor Bronson views our public library as an invaluable repository of human civilization, knowledge, and culture, as an important gathering grounds for communal connection and engagement, and as a critical center for learning and literacy. Jorge Luis Borges, the famous Argentine writer and essayist, wrote that he imagined paradise would be like a library, a welcoming place of wonder, knowledge, beauty, community, mystery, and adventure. Sammy Graham is the most qualified person to bring that metaphysical vision to life for all our library's patrons. I imagine each of us could use a little more paradise in our lives these days. Please confirm this wonderful Alaskan as the Anchorage Public Library's next director.
Thank you, Mr. Chewbacca. So we are running kind of behind here, but would you like to take a minute or two, Ms. Graham, to add anything?
I'd like to introduce myself to you guys.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, and I hope that my words today help you understand a little bit more about who I am. Thank you, Mayor Bronson, Madam Chairman, and Assembly members. It's truly an honor to be nominated for the position of Municipal Library Director and to testify before you today. I've had the chance to meet with some of you, and I'd like to thank you for your time and the informative discussions that we've had. I'm an Alaskan, born and raised. I'm a product of the Anchorage School District. I graduated from West High in 1977. Go Eagles, we hope to be in service tonight. I survived the 1964 earthquake not far from here, standing arm in arm with other Alaskans, 1 block from the Lusac Library. My husband, the old Lusac Library. My husband moved to Alaska almost 40 years ago, and we continue to make Alaska our home, as do my 6 brothers and sisters, their families, and our 3 grown children. Our oldest son is active duty military, and he served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He's currently serving his country by teaching at the United States Military Academy at West Point. But his heart remains in Alaska, his home of record. I'm thankful for him and for all of our state's veterans who risked their lives to protect our country's freedom and our state's freedom. I'm also a proud grandmother of 3 beautiful grandchildren who love Alaska and our public library, especially Sorty McSorter, the automatic book return, whom you guys know well because it's right there when you walk in. My family enjoys everything Alaska has to offer, from fishing on the Kenai to hunting and chicken and even hosting Iditarod mushers. Nikki's already addressed my professional background and qualifications, so I'll only touch on a few things. My professional experience includes 35 years in education, teaching from pre-K to adults, counseling, serving as principal in both public and private schools, and also a demonstrated passion for libraries. I've written and managed library grants. I've established preschool story hours. And Nikki mentioned I won the award from the Alaska Association of School Libraries for Outstanding Administrator. I understand that there are some concerns about my nomination, and Nikki's addressed those concerns, but I would just add that it's not uncommon for departmental directors at the local, state, or federal level to lack the subject matter expertise in some of the operational components. The same is often true of senior executives in companies in the private sector. I do not have an MLS degree, but I do have other skills and professional experience that are critically important for the library director to possess. They include a track record of leadership, overseeing personnel, day-to-day operations, managing budgets, demonstrating strong advocacy skills, as well as the ability to navigate complex community relations. And I'd like to bring all of those skills to work as library director. Over the past 6 weeks, I've spent time in all 5 libraries, and we also opened the Diamond Express Library, the DTX. John's on the phone, but he was there in person. And I have connections to all 5 of those neighborhoods. I taught at Birchwood Elementary and Woods and Eagle River. I started my teaching career in 1985 in Balloon. I spent summer or winters or weekends in Girdwood throughout my life. And I was a principal intern at Tyson in Mountain View neighborhood. But LUSAC has always been my library because that's the one that I could walk to from my family home. My point is that as an experienced educator and longtime patron of our public library, I've witnessed firsthand the important role that libraries play in fostering an early and lifelong love of learning. Unfortunately, years of renovations, increased digitization, and over a year of pandemic lockdown have disconnected the community from the library. And I want to help reestablish those bonds of connection between the library and our community. I do not believe we can have a healthy community or that our library can be a great library without that connection. I agree with R. David Lanks, an author and professor of librarianship, who said, bad libraries build collections, good libraries build services, great libraries build communities. I want to help our public library become a bustling community watering hole again, where Anchorage and citizens can commingle, collide, and ultimately coalesce into a beautiful kaleidoscope of colors and cultures that reflects our state's greatest treasure, its many diverse people groups. The great abolitionist Frederick Douglass wrote that once you learn to read, you will be forever free. We simply cannot continue to accept a status quo in which the overwhelming majority of our children are below proficient readers, and as a result, may never truly experience the full inheritance of freedom that is their birthright. Learning and liberty are impossible without literacy. So I want to help our library become a wellspring of literacy where children can build for themselves the foundation that they will need to experience the fullness of the freedom and opportunities that our nation and our state have promised them. Finally, I want to lead our library in becoming what the British novelist Doris Lessing once described as the most democratic of institutions, a place where people of all backgrounds are welcome, a place where the only entrance requirement is respect for the safety and inherent dignity of our fellow citizens, and a place where knowledge is equally accessible to all. Mr. Rogers, I was an elementary principal, Mr. Rogers was famous for saying, always look for the helpers. Well, our libraries are full of helpers, and I'm proud to be a library champion. I look forward to helping our libraries, wonderful helpers. And I'd like to thank Mayor Bronson for appointing me to this role, and thank the assembly members for listening and for your consideration for the confirmation. I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. We'll start with the first 5 people in the queue, Ms. Zelatil, Mr. Constant, Ms. Allard, Mr. Weddleton, and Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Zelatil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have 2 specific questions. I will say that with the library located in Midtown and myself and Mr. Rivera representing the Midtown District and the library being so important to Midtown, I'm a little disappointed I didn't receive any communication from you prior to today. So can you explain what you may know about Alaska Statute 40.24.140?
I do not know exactly what that statute is, but I can get back to you if you want to.
So that statute protects the confidentiality of library records, including patron records. And the applicability of that would apply to if a husband asked for a list of what his wife checked out, a parent asked what their child checked out, or even if a police officer asked, and it's the procedures for that is a key component to having an open library system. So I think it's very important that you check that out. And my second question then is, if a group of concerned citizens wants an item removed or programming removed due to things they find objectionable, what would you do?
Programs are always evaluated for efficacy, and if they go with our strategic plan, which would be the education community and sharing the unbiased information. That being said, the mayor makes sure, or we follow the mayor's directives on the library, but underneath the library advisory board and underneath the foundation, we get lots of information and lots of input from all of the other people that help run the library. So programs would be, and all individuals, all groups, all people would be given the same rights and respect as any other group. So everyone has the right to rent space at the library, private space at the library. So I just follow the law as the law is written.
Just
Go
what about
ahead,
a removal of an item from the collection? If a group wanted particular books removed or items removed from the library's collection?
Anything in the collection we're always looking at different things to keep and to cull. So it goes through a certain process, and that process wouldn't be any different for any specific item.
Is that process public information?
Mhm.
Great, it'd be great if you could share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zalatel. Mr. Constant?
Thank you. So, thank you for the meeting, Ms. Graham, but I'm gonna step over to what preceded you speaking here. I just can't let that go. I feel browbeaten by the speech that I just heard that went 20 minutes of an hour-long hearing. It was interesting you raised a quote from Jorge Luis Borges, because one of my favorite reads by him is The Library of Babel. One of the statements you made is that we have mistaken assertions about essentially our role and the functions we have to do here. You also asserted there's an unbroken history of confirmations of mayoral appointees. That is not in fact the case. There is precedent. You spoke of wooden reeds. You read about how if a director deems an equivalent qualification to be so, then it must be so. But in this case, this is a unique position, like all of the department heads, that the mayor appoints, and the assembly is in fact the judge of qualifications, not the mayor. He gets the first round, we have the second. And I would offer that the speech that I heard did not move me toward a confirmation, and in fact, may have worked against the good meeting that I had with Ms. Graham this week. I just want to put that out there, that browbeating policymaking body is not a wise tactic in the process of attempting to persuade us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. Ms. Allard?
Thank you. So a couple of things. Thank you, Mr. Shabaka. The information you gave me was very relevant. I didn't feel browbeaten. I felt that the public needed to know the facts. So I appreciate you coming forward and stating the facts on public record. And I would start off by saying that I understand you don't have a library? Can you tell
Master
me?
Library Information Science.
Right, so I have spoken to many police officers. Some of them have degrees and some of them don't. And if they come into the police force, they have a degree of maybe teaching, but they don't necessarily have a criminal justice degree, but they have experience, and they have experience in leadership. That means a lot to me, because if you come on board as a police officer with no degree, but within 5 or 6 years, you've got that experience, I'm sorry, but I want you to protect me. A degree has no relevance, and I would hate that message to be put out to people who have socioeconomic challenges, that just because you don't have a degree in this field, or you don't have a degree in general, that it means you can't be anything more than somebody who works at a mediocre job. I would like to see people be able to develop themselves into being a director, or some of us on the assembly with no degrees. It doesn't mean you can't obtain those things. I'd also like to state that with our fire department, not all individuals in the fire department have a fire science degree. And I would also like to state, as a member of the military past, you don't have to have a degree to reach the highest ranking Command Sergeant Major E9 in the military. And I would follow an E9 with 30 years of experience before I follow a private with no experience. That being said, could you please tell me 2 things that you feel that you would like to change to move our library in a better direction or more efficient direction? And also, do you believe in your leadership, and how is that going to help you lead our community? And I would say the state's largest library that services over 280,000 residents, aside maybe from UAA or those universities.
So the first thing was change, and what was?
2 things you plan on changing with the library or helping to better improve, and 1 way you feel your leadership is going to help.
one way, I'll start with the second one first. One way my leadership would help is that I'm as old as Alaska. I was born and raised here in Alaska. I've taught in almost every neighborhood here in Anchorage. I understand Anchorage. I have a passion for libraries and especially for kids and literacy and how it will help them for the rest of their lives. What I would change is we are 50th in the nation for reading proficiency in the state of Alaska, and Anchorage, our reading proficiency in Anchorage is very specifically poor, and some of the statistics you mentioned. What we can do is connect the children and the people of Anchorage to literacy through the library, and the library needs to be that connection, that conduit to that. For whatever reason, maybe it was because of the renovations or because of the shutdown during COVID, not as many people are accessing the library. They don't know some of the cool things that are happening at the library. So I would love to make sure that we boost that readership and that support and the library membership. Second, I would love to have make it that cultural community center of where they can get access unbiased information and have a sense of community, but all parts of our community, all people. We have this wonderful Alaskan Anchorage community that I've seen grow since 1959. And it's something that makes us unique here. With the Anchorage School District, we have now over 100 different languages spoken. We have our pockets of neighborhood that are great. Reaching all of those people to bring them to the library would be something that I would love to do.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Go ahead, Ms. Ellis.
I wanted you to hit on something that you had mentioned to me, and you had said something about books being delivered. Can you hit on, because that really,
Yep.
I really like that, and I just want to know if you can hit on that real quick.
Sure. So I'm actually writing an ARPA grant right now for the library for what we call a mobile library. And some people would think of that as a bookmobile, but it's way more than a bookmobile. It's where the library can go to the communities or go to the senior centers. COVID has taken a lot from a lot of people, but especially from our senior population. The mobile library would go right to the seniors where they're at and would help them understand some of the new cool innovations that we have at the library, like some of the digital options, and not just that they're available, but help them learn the process of how to access the digital options, because there's a lot of them.
Thank you, Ms. Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eller. Before we move on, I just want to remind members that work sessions are intended to be informational and not contain debate. And we have less than 20, we have about 17 minutes. I also want to offer that, it's in the purview of assembly members to ask questions and to get answers. And if we don't have enough time to do that today, we can schedule another work session as needed. So we'll go ahead and move on through the queue. Next, we have Mr. Weddleton, who will be followed by Ms. Kennedy and then Mr. Perez-Rodriguez. Mr. Weddleton.
All right, thank you. So this is actually for Mr. Chewbacca. So you had said that no one with a master's in library science applied during the mayor's transition team. How many people did apply?
Through the chair, was that Assemblymember Weddleton?
Yeah, it's Weddleton.
Yes, I am not aware of how many did. I can look into that.
Okay, that is great. Thank you. Chair, can I ask a second question?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Weddleton.
Okay, so a lot of what you do, whether you have an MLS or not, is you're leading a very independent group of people, dynamic group of people in the library system, and beyond the actual staff, there's this huge network of people who are volunteers doing things. You've got your board, you've got Friends of the Library and Library Foundation who have an incredible passion for the library. So, and we've gotten a lot of emails, as you know, you don't meet the qualifications. That's what's often stated. So in the time that you've been in the position, how have you addressed that with these people or these groups?
Through the chair, Assembly Weddleton, I've met with many of the groups. I've had 2 meetings with the Library Advisory Board, and I've reached out to the Friends of the Library director, or I guess president it would be. So I've tried to meet with the different groups that have input into the library. I've also tried to meet with every department and or work in every department in the library. And like I said, I went to the different neighborhoods, the different branches. So that's what I did to reach out. Hopefully that answers your question.
Any follow-up?
Were you able to meet with Friends of the Library or Library Foundation at all?
The Library Foundation hasn't had their meeting yet because they don't meet in July, I think it was. And they're about to have it next Tuesday. Friends of the Library, I met with the president because the friends were meeting when I was at my niece's wedding. And I have met twice with the Library Advisory Board. So I have met, and then I have weekly staff meetings with all of the people that work at the library. And I'm at the library every day meeting the patrons, which is the most fun part.
Any follow-up, Mr.
Okay.
Middleton?
Well, so you met with, how'd it go?
How did it go?
How'd those meetings go? So you met with them, you addressed these issues up front in a real leadership style. How did it work?
At the meetings, I've had wonderful conversations, and with some of the people here on the assembly. The meetings have gone well. The meetings for the Library Advisory Board are kind of run by the board and right now by the assistant director. So until confirmation happens, but I'm there putting in input and listening. And I think it's really important to develop those relationships, to have conversations with all people so that you can kind of hear all the different sides. So that's what's been helpful for me.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton.
I also have an answer for his question.
Go ahead, Mr.
True.
Chewbacca.
Mr. Weddleton, there was only one applicant for the library director. Sammy was the only one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chewbacca. So we have next Ms. Kennedy, then Mr. Presberdia, then Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the introduction too, and actually the answer to a lot of things that have been floating around. So I appreciate the fact that the mayor would come out and actually plead his case, if you will. But I know there are some controversial things that I'd kind of like to touch on. And one of them is, obviously we are a varied and diverse people in this community. And there are strong opinions on any side of any topic. You pick the topic, we can argue about what color to paint the room. But my point is, in the library where you have multiple people from all kinds of different groups, ethnicities, opinions, political parties, they all are going to use the library in some way, shape, or form for the most part. And so my question really is, knowing that we have such a variety of opinions and positions on items in that, how do you plan to balance that just in terms of, in particular, we have parents that want certain things for their children or don't want certain things for their children. They want to choose things that they want their children exposed to or not exposed to. And you can pick any topic on that. So your focus has been a little bit on children, young children, this idea of really helping children to read, because we have such a reading issue with children, whether they're, even those that are homeschooled and that, can have that challenge. So anyway, just how do you balance the varied opinions of others when it comes to using the library?
I think the most important thing about dealing with different groups of people is to listen to all the people and to have conversations with all the people, and not just listen without truly listening and wanting to come to some kind of consensus. The library it's very important that it's the people's library, that it's the public's library, that it's just as much your library as it is my library. And it needs to be a safe place for all. Assemblyman Constant, if you don't mind me saying, when we were running up the elevator together, we rode up the elevator with somebody who finds the library a safe place every day in the same spot with his cooler and his backpack. It's his library as much as it is my library. And so I wanted to make sure that he felt just as welcome there every day. He reads his books and he stays warm at the library. That's something that should continue to happen. People coming in to get books, homeschool moms. We have over 7,000 families that left the school district. So now we have 7,000 moms that are becoming teachers. Those moms are utilizing the library as well, and they should feel just as safe and just as comfortable as the gentleman that rode up the elevator with us. So I just want to make sure that it's a welcoming place for everybody, and that there are programs too that help serve those diverse people and groups that are coming to the library.
Thank you. Can I, another question?
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank
Kennedy.
you, thank you. I noticed in your resume that you have training in aggression intervention therapy, emotional, psychological, and physical safety for the workplace, as well as emergency crisis response. And I just wondered how you thought that kind of experience and expertise would actually help or benefit a lot of the library patrons or just the community at large. Thanks.
We have what's called a code of conduct now that was adopted by the Library Advisory Board on April 20th, and we've just trained everyone in it, and now we can utilize it or put it into action so that the staff feels comfortable. So what we want to make sure is that everybody utilizes the library, but that they know that there is a code of conduct and that there are red lines that you can't cross. So you need to make sure that you're safe at the library, you're not using obscenities, things like that. My background in counseling helps with that. We also have the CRC team that we have housed in the library now that is funded through the grant, but then it will be through the alcohol tax. So it just makes for a great cohesive unit to help the library be a really safe, welcoming place. I do have background in MANT training, Washington Aggressive Intervention training. I mean, all the trainings that counselors have to help with the de-escalation. But the big thing that I found is if you develop a relationship with people first and not try to attack them, then once I've built that relationship, it helps for the escalation piece not to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So we'll go to Mr. Perez-Verdia, Mr. Dunbar, and then Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. And I know we don't have very much time, so I'm going to try to go quick. So I have to admit that I find it a little bit disingenuous that we were told that you were the only candidate that all the candidates did not have the degrees that was required, but later we find out you were the only candidate. My question is, did you apply for this position, or did the mayor approach you for this position?
The mayor appointed me.
No, my question is, did the mayor come to you and request for you to be in this position, or did you come to him and request to be in this position?
When they were seeking people to help with the new administration, I think I wrote a one-line email that said, I'm willing to help in any way you need me.
That's what I was trying to understand, is this is a position you seeked as opposed to, we'll move on. So the next question is how many staff and what is the budget of the library?
The budget's $9.2 million. The staff is 90 but 78 FTE. So we have some people that are working part-time, partially. And what was the last question? Sorry.
Oh, that was it. So my question is your background is being a principal, primarily a principal of an elementary school. And I guess what I'm wondering is that this seems like a much larger job, a much different job than anything you've ever done in the past. And you don't have the degree that is normally sort of there. I guess I'm still confused as to how you are qualified, having not led an organization of this size or this budget passed, and not having necessarily the educational background. Can you explain that to me?
I have 2 master's degrees, and then I have other bachelor's and an elementary education certification as well. My background and my expertise and my leadership experience is not, it's just different. It's not lesser than someone with a Master of Library Science. It's just different. And I actually think it complements the people that are working at the library right now. It fills in some of the gaps that they have, that they knew that they had through, if you read some of the staff surveys, they identify some of those gaps, and I can help with that. The other thing that I have that is hard to put on paper is I was born and raised here. So I have the ability to talk to people and to call someone and to say, hey, I need help with this library issue. I have questions about this. I need help with this funding. So that's a wealth right there that other people wouldn't have and difficult to put on a resume.
Right, so, but the key piece, and I understand we had a debate about the degree, and just to clarify, we had a member of the assembly say to you that specifically the quote was, a degree has no relevance. You have 2 master's degrees and a bachelor's degree. Do you think a degree has relevance?
I'm not sure your question.
Do you think a master's and a bachelor's degree has relevance to a job?
I think, yes, I think degrees help. I've fired people with degrees. So I think experience and leadership style is way more important.
Than degrees?
I think degrees are important, but because they show tenacity and you learn different things. I consider myself a lifelong learner, so I don't tell my husband I'll probably get another degree. So I just like to learn.
Right. Well, just that last comment is this: the piece that I'm still troubled with is not the degree piece. The piece I'm troubled with is this is a much different and much larger organization than you have ever led. I mean, it is significantly different and larger.
Yeah,
So in terms of experience, in that way, I'm finding it difficult to see your experience relevant to this role. I mean, a budget of this size is something you've never seen.
Through the chair, schools are part of a much larger organization. So when you say I was just the principal of an elementary school, I was a part of an $842 million budget. And I also led a school staff almost the size of the library, at least the size of the library that is at LUSAC, so about 55 people. So I think I had that experience in working with budgets, the school district budget. Our school was a piece of the school district budget, but part of a much larger budget. Actually, more than the budget of the municipality of Anchorage.
Thank you, Mr. Perez-Rodriguez. So we have 2 minutes left, and we have 1, 2, 4, 5 folks in the queue, and we also have another meeting starting where we actually do have some doctors on the line and waiting. So
I'll have short answers.
I mean, let's go quickly and see if we can get through a few questions. Obviously, we're going to have some follow-up because we have not had enough time for members to state their questions. So, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would propose we go a few minutes over. Hopefully, the doctors can accommodate us. So the Cameron's question is a good segue to mine. So I know that all department heads have been asked to cut from their budget. So I'm asking, I would like to know how much have you been asked to cut? And what programs or positions are you proposing to cut?
We were asked to cut exactly what every department was asked to cut, which was 5%. And we did that in a couple ways, a couple positions that were, one was unfilled. But the main thing that it would affect was Sunday service. So that's the part that would affect people. The reason being is that Sunday we're open from 1 to 5, and we have to staff for an entire 8-hour day. So you're paying for 8-hour positions, but you're only getting 4 hours of work.
So just to clarify, so you were saying to end Sunday service at all of our libraries?
We only offer Sunday service at the LUSAC,
Okay.
but we also opened DTX, which is the Diamond Center Transit, which is almost not 24/7, but open quite a bit. And we've increased, during COVID, we increased our digital options. So your access to the library is really almost 24/7.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was reached out to in public settings by one former longtime library employee and a current library longtime employee, both with master's degrees and more than 7 years of experience. And they felt that your nomination was creating resentment among library employees. And my question is, how do you plan to overcome that resentment?
Through the chair, I appreciate that question because it will take some healing, I think. The best way I do it is to lead by example, to build relationships, to get to know people, to not make anybody feel like they're not important. Every job at the library is very important, and I call that the visibles and the invisibles. Every job needs to make sure that they know that they're helping the library keep it going, keep it active and keep it up and running for the public. So building those relationships, leading by example, kind of developing that trust, that would be what I would work on, and I am working on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Weddleton?
Well, thanks. Again, I want to follow up on Nikki's point, or Mr. Shabak, I'm sorry, that only Sammy applied for it. So I got a text from somebody who said, well, maybe, apparently maybe through the Bronson transition website, but apparently the job was open on the mayor's website and that perhaps 3 people applied through there. And is that, are you aware of that? Or is that an active process to, if some of the jobs open on the regular Muni hiring website, that they would be looked at as well? Thanks.
Through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton, Nikki is totally fine. Let me look into that for you. I have a thought, but I want to make sure the information I give you is accurate. So I'm happy to look into that and get back to you on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Ms. Allard?
Thank you. Thank you for your answers to my colleague about addressing that we are a large organization. When I say we, I mean the library. But I will have to say, as a representative to my district, I've never led 50,000 people. And so some may disagree, but I think I'm doing a pretty darn good job. So my thing to you would be, my question is, all that aside, do you believe in your staff, and are they experienced enough and qualified enough to support you when there are issues and concerns that come up that will actually make you a better leader?
I absolutely believe in my staff. We have 2 assistant directors, and then I am writing grants with both of them, working with them every day. And then there's it goes down in the chain of command. So there's all kinds of people that are working at the library that are doing very specific jobs. Some are very technical, some are outreach, some are programming, some are collection, building the collection or purchasing. So there's very specific roles in the library. I've gotten to know all of them, and I hope to get to know all of the roles better and all of the people better, but I'm enjoying that process. I personally love and appreciate working with a team and building a team that appreciates each other. And that's something that I think I can help with at the library.
Maybe one quick follow-up.
Very quickly, please, Ms. Allard.
Do you work with a very diverse staff at the library?
Yeah, just like sorry, through the chair. Yes, it's very diverse and like it was in the school settings, in the public school settings. So I worked with many different Title schools, Title I schools. I think you heard the different neighborhoods I worked in. So that's what's fun, is different groups.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As folks have mentioned earlier in this work session, the library, as you know, is a place of welcoming and accepting people for who they are and serving them. You've made statements in the past, for instance, that LGBTQ inclusion is not age appropriate for elementary. Can you speak to us about how you'll welcome LGBT students, particularly with our students' kids, particularly with the rate of suicide as we know it is in that population, and include them in the library?
Absolutely. Suicide directly affected our family. And so I think you as assembly members heard me speak to that at the assembly meeting. I'll treat every individual and group and organization with the respect and the rights of any other group. So I'll just follow the letter of the law as the law is written. It's the right thing to do.
Can I just do a quick
Go
follow-up?
ahead, Ms. Quinn.
Did you state that LGBTQ inclusion is not age appropriate for elementary age kids?
When I think some of you know, I ran for the school board. When you're running for the school board, there's different forms, and some are made. Sometimes they'll take sound bites from different short quips, and I think you guys being in the assembly know that short quips are not necessarily show the whole picture. I'm all about conversations, and a conversation was not allowed to happen in that respect. So, like I said, I'll treat every individual and every group with the same rights and respect as anybody else and follow the law.
Thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. We are over time. Normally, I would ask the nominee to
Thank you.
make us, okay. You want to tell me in like 3 minutes? We'll get started with the